Yeah, let's tax those billionaires. Make them pay their fair share. Well, we'll talk about why that is a horrible idea. Hi, I'm John McNeil, and this is the Invest Strong Network. Welcome. So, President Biden and the Dems in Congress have put together a mammoth spending program that has all of their priorities going forward for the next 10 years. Uh, Things related to climate change, infrastructure, physical infrastructure, but also a bevy of new or expanded social programs, uh, taking it into account everything from preschool, universal preschool to um, elder care, special elder care, and other things that may be worthwhile to examine and implement, but paying for them becomes rather tricky. So the Dems have fallen back on their tried and true method of financing new or expanded programs, which is make the rich pay for it, right? And what better way of doing it than slapping the word billionaire onto their proposals and making the billionaires pay for it? All right, yeah. I think everybody can go for that because, I mean, after all, these people, they're already living high off the hog. They won't miss the extra few $1 billion that the Treasury will collect out of their either capital gains or bank accounts or wherever they have their wealth. And that could be used to finance these things that our civilization desperately needs. Okay, this is why these this idea is just horrendous in both its approach and its implementation. Okay, first of all, if we as a society, a civilization, decide that these priorities are this important to where it's going to cost in the trillions of dollars over at least a decade, probably more than that, then as a civilization, a society, we should agree to pay for it, right? And that means everyone should have to pay something to do this. And see, that's how during the New Deal programs of the 1930s, that's how Social Security was structured, right? Everyone would have to pay into Social Security and everyone would take out of Social Security. And Medicare, everyone would pay into a Medicare program and everyone would take out of Medicare program, right? And even universal unemployment, right? So if you are an employee who has a W-2 form, right, then you will pay into the program, and then when such time comes that you need unemployment benefits to be paid out for you to you, then you can benefit from it, right? Everyone pays in, and just about everyone takes out. That's what a reasonable, thoughtful, truly serious social programs financing of such, that's what you would do. Not this business of, oh yeah, it's critical, we have to do this, our civilization needs this to move forward, but hey, we don't want we don't want to tax ordinary people or in the middle class to pay for it. No, no, no. We'll instead levy the tax on just this sliver of a minority and make them pay for it. See, that kind of tells me that maybe some of these priorities are not as critical as the Dems and the progressives say that they are. Right. I mean, that's just what it tells me. I mean, I could be wrong, but if it were really as critical as they're saying, then they would make sure that just about everyone in our civilization has some skin in the game. That's number one. Number two is the way that the Dems have structured this thing, where they're taking unrealized capital gains and making the billionaire class essentially pay for that. This thing is going to be horrendously complex, and it's going to add thousands upon thousands of new pages to the tax code, a tax code that is already a monstrosity beyond belief, and make it that much more complex. Now, you may say to yourself, well, if it's just the billionaires that'll have to deal with it, let them hire the accountants and the lawyers to come into compliance. Well, the thing about it is this proposal reminds me very much, it's extremely reminiscent of the luxury tax that the Dems had kicked around back in the late 80s and actually finally had implemented during the days of Papa Bush in the early 1990s. So they had quite a bit of deficit spending that they wanted to do, critical programs that needed to be funded, but they did not want to have across the board tax increases for the American people. So what did they do? Well, they conjured up this idea of a luxury tax. So this luxury tax would be applied to exotic and luxury vehicles, and also watercraft, which, as you might imagine, is the purview of the super wealthy, right? Okay, Congress passed it. Papa Bush signed it into law. Here's the deal. The persons who are most affected by this very targeted tax increase, they immediately began to work on undermining the law and finding ways to get around it, which they were able to quite successfully do, right? So as it related to watercraft, they started buying used watercrafts from Canada or Mexico, or buying new watercraft, newly constructed watercraft from Europe or Canada, or even some places in Latin America. They could acquire them overseas, completely escape the tax, then have the watercraft sail to the United States of America shores. Boom, they have their watercraft, they get around the tax, and American industry gets screwed all the way around, right? And of course, it doesn't bring in anywhere near the tax that the Congress originally thought it was going to bring in when they implemented it. And a similar thing happened with the luxury vehicles. In fact, with the luxury vehicles, it became even worse because they initially set the threshold for the luxury tax kicking in at $30,000. Now, back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, $30,000 was the higher end of vehicles for sure. But as time went on and vehicles began to increase in value across the board, all of a sudden this luxury tax start creeping in to middle class people, right? And then it had this unintended consequence of nailing people that are not living high off the hog, but in fact they need to purchase more expensive trucks for work or for things like that, and the tax was just killing them, which is exactly what the Congress was looking to avoid. And for those persons who really wanted to live high off the hog and purchase a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something like that, again, they could purchase them in Europe, have them brought over for half the cost of having to pay the full tax if they bought the vehicles in the shores of the United States of America. It just makes no sense whatsoever. There's no question about it. When and if the Congress writes this new billionaire tax, and if Mr. Biden signs it into law, immediately the accountants and lawyers and actuaries that are utilized by the wealthy will get working on ways to undermine the thing, right? And believe me, at the end of the day, it will not collect anywhere near the amount of revenue that they said that it would, which means that the deficit is going to grow. These programs are probably going to expand even much larger than their original orientation, and the whole thing is going to become a monstrosity. And that has absolutely been the pattern throughout American history, and certainly since the New Deal days of the 1930s. That's basically been the way it's happened, right? So that's why I say this billionaire tax, or a tax on unrealized capital gains, is a horrendous idea, right? If these programs truly are as critical and as necessary as the progressives and the Dems and President Biden say that they are, level with the American people and just tell them that they are going to have to pay more taxes across the board in order to finance it. And forget about the funny business of passing it on to a sliver of a minority and forcing them to pay for your priorities. It should be something that everyone has to pay some amount of in order to get it done. Now, one last thing. Some people may say, well, the rich, they need to pay their fair share. Yeah, they're billionaires. Make them pay their fair share. I mean, actually, for some billionaires, they say that their secretaries pay a higher tax rate than they do because of all the deductions and exemptions and all these ways that they can hide money and whatnot. Okay, that might be true, but that is the very reason why it would be wiser not to implement these things like this, but instead have an across the board pattern. So those are my thoughts for this week. Let me know what you think of the proposal. I'd love to hear it, right? And also smash that thumbs up button. Do it for me, please. I love you. And of course, you know what I'm going to ask. Subscribe! You got to subscribe to Invest Strong. I'd appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much. And good blessings.